Right. Well, hello, everyone. Or if a panelist wants to join us on stage, feel free to do so. Just turn on your camera and mic. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, everyone in the audience. My name is Maddie Frank, and I'm going to be tonight's moderator for our Meet the Stars of 3D Printing Automotive Edition. And I'm so excited to have all of you here with us. So I'm going to go ahead and say exactly who our panelists are here today, and then I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and give a brief bio. For all of our speakers that are on stage, if you want to go ahead and mute yourselves while you're not speaking, that way we don't have any sort of feedback going on in the audio, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So to give you a little bit of background on today's speakers, we have Kadie Hartman, who's with Ford, Allyson, Abel, Stratasys, Malini, Dusey from GM, Bogi, who's with Girl Gang Garage, Shawnda, who's also with Girl Gang Garage, and then Taylor Doty, who's with Divergent. Allie, if you want to go ahead and start us off and give us a quick little, background about yourself and what you do with Ford, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Allie Abel. I work with Stratasys. I've been there about 3.5 years now, going on 4. Based in Southern California. Typically I'm in the office, but been working remote for the last year now, so I'm hoping to get back in the office soon. Originally, I'm from Southern Indiana. I have a mechanical engineering background and came out here not expecting to get involved in 3D printing, but here I am, and it's been pretty exciting. Been working in automotive, medical, aerospace, all different sorts of applications. So I get to see all kinds of stuff come in my way. But my true passion is with motorsports, and anytime I get to work with motorsports and kind of combine additive manufacturing and racing or aftermarket company parts or anything like that, it's pretty exciting. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So much. And then Kadie Hartman, would you like to kind of give us a little brief introduction about yourself next?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Kadie Hartman. I work in the Ford Performance Department here in Michigan. So a lot of my job is geared around designing chassis, like suspension or frame parts for cars like the Mustang or the Raptor, which is really cool to me. I've been at Ford a little bit less than 4 years now. And I got into 3D printing kind of as a hobby during college. And it was an expertise that I brought with me to my job. And now I kind of use it during my job a little bit, not as much, but I do it a lot at home. But at work, it's nice to be able to do some prototype brackets or whatever we need as a quick and easy solution. I'm originally from Central California, so I kind of made a big jump moving here to Michigan. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love how you were able to turn your passion for 3D printing and kind of weave it into your career, but also keep it on the side as a hobby too. So that's pretty cool. Malini, excuse me, would you like to go next as well? Oh.
Sorry about that. I'm Malini Desai. I work at General Motors, and I am working in the additive group for the past 3 years. Most of the efforts really are geared towards manufacturing tooling, and we have an array of different 3D capabilities within General Motors. General Motors is full steam ahead with EV and all kinds of new vehicles that are going to be coming on board very soon. That's thrilling in itself, but then to be within additive, within General Motors is very exciting every single day. I'm originally from India. I had moved to the US to go to school, graduate school, and never left. Have been working in plastics industries most of my life, starting from making the plastic to injection molding to designing components, and then with GM making headlights and taillights, and then now additive manufacturing. So I feel I have a good understanding of both traditional as well as additive manufacturing, and I having that background kind of helps because you kind of learn what the limitations are in the traditional manufacturing and then see how additive can solve the very problems you've had most of your career. So I'm very excited to be here. I've had some very good conversations with the folks on the side tables and looking forward to hearing from the rest. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And then Bogi, to go next.
Mute myself, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I am really excited to be here and part of this. I feel like I'm a little bit of an outsider. I am not super experienced or familiar with utilizing 3D printing, although it's something that I find incredibly exciting, especially as it applies to the automotive industry. I come from an automotive background, from kind of the more traditional sense of automotive. I've been a mechanic for 20 years. I've been a shop owner, but I have ventured recently over the last 4 years or so into the world of restoration and customization, and the kind of ever-going problem that we have is how to find parts that aren't being made anymore, how to deal with custom applications where parts just don't exist. And so 3D printing offers a lot of really interesting opportunities in that arena. And it's really exciting to see, for me, what's going on with 3D printing in the automotive industry as a whole when it comes to prototyping and opening up the field a little bit for more creativity and more players to be involved in bringing products to market. So I'm really excited about 3D printing, but I am not super familiar with it, and really just diving into it for my first time on our current all-female build that I run at my shop, Girl Gang Garage, with my business partner Shawnda, who will be introducing herself shortly. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, but that's me in a nutshell.
Great. It was a great little nutshell that you were able to give. And Shawnda, on that note, would you also like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Shawnda. I'm the other half of Girl Gang Garage, but by day I work for a defense contractor, General Dynamics. So I do have some familiarity with 3D printing. I run our user experience group there. So we do a lot of high fidelity prototyping utilizing 3D printing. So it's an interesting dichotomy going from using 3D printing strictly for pre-production stuff to going into automotive restoration where we're using it as post-production and just this is the actual piece and part. So for us, it's really exciting opportunity because it really is just like unlocks the potential of whatever you can imagine. We're big proponents of if you can dream it, you can build it, and then ultimately you can drive it, and 3D printing is just helping us do that much quicker. So we are super excited to be here today.
Awesome. And I'm super excited to have you as well, Shawnda. And last but not least, Taylor, would you like to go and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Taylor Doty, and I am our additive manufacturing production manager at Divergent. And most of our production is metal 3D printed parts. So I came to Divergent almost 3 years ago as a manufacturing engineer. Most of my experience is in like design and analysis. I came from the aerospace world, working more with castings and turbine airfoils. And then I did start to work in 3D printing before, about a year before joining this, moving from a larger company to this startup. It's been really interesting because we basically are 3D printing most of the car that we're producing, as you can kind of see in the pictures around my face there. And we're really looking at how we can automate, scale up, improve our technology, not just from the machine side, but from kind of the build prep side, kind of across everything. So I really like additive manufacturing because it's not, even though it's been around for a while, there's still a lot that isn't figured out. So as a younger person like many of the people here, it's a great industry to step in. A lot of the softwares that are available are easy to use to start making some of your own parts. So yeah, I'm really passionate about what I do here. It's really fun. It's a combination between a lot of a lot of hands-on work, and a lot of computer work. And I guess I'm originally from Michigan. I went to college in Michigan. I lived in Ohio and then moved. I'm in Torrance, California now. So it looks like we're all kind of Midwest in California, which is interesting. But yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with, a as we go along, but to the audience members as well, if you notice on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a little arrow or a box that says chat participants Q&A. If you go over to that Q&A box and enter your questions, if you have any during this actual chat or presentation, go ahead and throw them in there into that Q&A section, and I'll be able to go through and answer those questions or weave them into the conversation as we go. So just a quick heads up to all of our audience members today. So to begin this panel, I just want to ask our panelists, and it's a free-for-all question, so whoever wants to answer it, how did you fall in love with 3D printing, get into 3D printing, and also how did you get into automotive as well? I know we kind of did a little bit about that with the bio, but is there more to that story than we initially know?
I guess I'll go. So one of the things that got me really interested in 3D printing was not actually me, but my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. But he got super interested in it, and as a gift for him, I bought him like a super cheap 3D printer off of Amazon, and we put it together ourselves, and then we just kind of started using it for whatever. We printed toothpaste holders and toys for our roommate's cat, and stuff like that. And eventually it just kind of morphed into, oh, hey, this is really useful. Let's print it for this project in this class. And then it moved into, hey, I'm on the FSAE team. Let's print working prototypes that'll actually go on our car to test out theories or different designs. And then we expanded it even further. And we actually started our own 3D printing business at our college, where we would print parts for other students who needed parts printed for their individual projects. And so it just kind of snowballed from this, hey, this is pretty cool, let's try it out, to, wow, this is really interesting and extremely useful. And now I'm doing it all the time. And then kind of separately, I got into automotive just because that's what I was around when I was a kid. My dad had a '67 Camaro, and I was so sad that he never took it out for a drive and he never fixed it up. So it was kind of the basis of my motivation for becoming someone who could fix up cars and who would go around and actually do something with these really cool old American muscle cars that I so enjoy.
Just as a side note, Kadie and I are friends outside of this. I was actually her maid of honor in her wedding, so I know her and her husband very well. And I still have a 3D printed glow-in-the-dark frog toothpaste squeezer thing. We use it all the time, so.
I'm glad you have it still.
Awesome, that's wonderful, Kadie. So I think that's really interesting how you had kind of an inspiration with your dad's old Camaro to push you into becoming someone that could learn about cars and, understand and fix cars as you go along. But, at least for me as a moderator and someone that's always been interested in vehicles, I haven't necessarily had that outlet to go around and, learn about automotive and actually submerge myself into that culture and learning how to fix things. So Bogi and Shawnda, I feel like this is a really appropriate question to throw to you. What's your recommendation for young people that are interested in getting into automotive, even if they don't necessarily have those resources to do so?
Well, I'll jump in because I didn't grow up around cars, right? I was that kid who didn't have resources around them to get into cars. My parents aren't into cars. They don't know where I came from. It started out as me being a young, little, stubborn girl, feminist who saw, I wanted a Volkswagen Bug because I thought they were cute. And then I started reading Volkswagen magazines, and I saw that the only time women showed up in car magazines was in high heels and bikinis. And I took that as a personal affront, and decided in that moment that that shouldn't be that way. And I wanted to change it, and I wanted to take high school auto shop. And prior to that, I didn't even know my high school had an auto shop, but it was something I sought out because of this observation. And I was really discouraged from it and actively told that women really didn't belong in automotive. And that, of course, upset me even more and made me more intense on becoming a technician. So I think, you know, I think we come from all walks of life, women in automotive, and there's a ton of different opportunities within automotive. If it's something that is interesting to you, there's so many ways to get involved, whether it's just diving into your own vehicle and getting hands-on, going to school for it, research, like find those opportunities to learn what it is you're passionate about, whatever that is. Because I think if anything, my experience taught me is that, you know, if no matter what anybody else is saying you are capable of, it all that matters at the end of the day is what you think you're capable of and what's going to make you happy and allow you to enjoy your life to the fullest. So whatever that is, go seek out the opportunities that'll allow you to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I really think it's very interesting how, you know, you started to get involved with automotive just because you kept seeing women in high heels and bikinis on cars. So,
yeah, I didn't think I was going to fall in love with it. And then I did.
Well, I mean, no matter how you got there, you got there. Shawnda, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so mine's more of a downstream version of that. So similar to a lot of you ladies, like, you know, you're working your job or you're going to school, and one of the women I was talking to at the small roundtable thing beforehand, she was like, "Oh, restoration seems so daunting." So that's a lot of the genesis of how I kind of came into it. Is restoration seemed super daunting. I loved cars. I never really interacted with cars. Like, I've worked in technology and design my entire career, so automotive was pretty foreign to me. So I found opportunity through Bogi's first project, which was all-female restoration. It was open to people with no experience level, so I was like, well, I haven't tried this, let me try this. So for me, that was kind of my pathway in, and I found a lot of relative connective tissue with things that I had done in my own previous life. Like, I have an art degree, so a lot of that translated directly to the elements of restoration, like one-to-one. And that relationship, I think, is often missed with people. That so much of what you do in your everyday life, if you're a mechanical engineer, you're an additive manufacturing engineer, like, there's so much of that that is so one-to-one with the car, and that same basic, like, cognitive, hands-on, tactile brain is it's the same. So it's just a matter of finding an opportunity to try. We're always a safe place, like, shameless plug for what we do, because our builds are open to women throughout the United States. There's no cost to participate. It's basically just get yourself to Phoenix and we'll put a wrench in your hand. And that's what got me in it. And now I'm like a co-owner of a shop. So it's a fast thing. It's a gateway drug, I can tell you that much. And much like that, the first hit's free. So come to Phoenix.
Wonderful, wonderful. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to add to that? Malini or Taylor at all?
So I kind of got into additive because I was really bad at machining in school. Like, they had us, I don't know, like, I feel like they didn't really give us that much training, and a lot of stuff we had to use kind of the classic older machines, and I was better at, like, CNCing and setting it up, and then I kind of picked more projects, and I liked doing things in CAD. So for me, at least, just with my skills that I naturally had coming into school, it was easier for me to kind of work. And I worked in, like, the SLA printing, so a plastic printing lab, and it was kind of, it felt more like if you messed up, like, kind of the consequences to me didn't seem as bad just in my head. So I definitely became a little more hands-on working with the plastic printers when I was in college. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think, like, at least at my company, I started at a pretty big company, and all the roles that were interesting and kind of designing new things were in 3D printing. So that's kind of why my career kind of shifted towards that.
And in my case, I wasn't a big auto person when I entered GM. I had a manufacturing engineering background. Skills kind of met, and I joined it. Went into lighting with no experience in lighting, but again having the skills which could be applied. I found that coming in from the outside, having some idea and some skills that you can apply works to your benefit. Certainly did in the cases that I saw and I was involved in, because again, you're not limited by everything that you just know, and you're not in the box, but you can bring in ideas because you don't even know that they will work. Others don't even think of it because it's closed. Something they haven't tried, and that's the risk taking can be applied to any field, and of course additive is an emerging field which you do need those two things to be successful, to be able to the applications that you're looking for. So I would say for anyone who is wanting to come in, if you have the curiosity, I think engineering skills really do help because a lot of it is design. A lot of it is understanding the equipment. Understanding additive itself is not difficult. You'll get that very quickly, but all the other principles that go with it, which will allow you to go many steps further, it would be good to have an engineering or a manufacturing background as I look around in GM. As for being a woman in this space, I've always been in male-dominated manufacturing environments, and I thought GM is going to be just the same. And I'm so pleasantly surprised at the corporation that Mary Barra has created, where equality and diversity, I mean, those are not just buzzwords, we live by them. And you see that, and everyone's equal. And so times are changing, ladies, and it's really good to see that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love hearing that, GM truly does live by those principles that we typically state as buzzwords. A lot of people do, they don't really walk the walk, but they might talk the talk. So it's really exciting that you're able to live and work in that environment. But I did want to kind of bring us back to something that both you, Malini, and Shawnda both brought up. And you're kind of talking about, Malini, engineering skills, engineering principles, and Shawnda, how you were able to interweave your art degree into automotive and restorations of automobiles. For people that are looking, and students that are looking to get into a technical field like automotive or additive manufacturing in that respect, should they pursue an engineering degree, or can they go into this field with a design degree or something that's more creative artistic, or a marketing degree? Like, what avenues do students have to take to get into automotive or any sort of tech field?
I guess I'll start off on that. To get into automotive, especially right now, there is a huge trade deficit. So if you're willing and able and have the grit and tenacity, you could pretty much do whatever within that industry, because I think there's a willingness to train and offer opportunities that there hasn't ever been before, because like the deficit rivals the nursing deficit that they had maybe 10 years ago, where everything is so incentivized toward bringing people in to the industry. I would say, in terms of looking at it from a tech standpoint and an engineering standpoint, like, I don't think that you can bypass the knowledge that you need to do really like high end additive manufacturing type of thing without an engineering degree. The math, the science, all those elements to it, I don't know that you can bypass that aspect. But I think if you clear that hurdle, there's a whole bounty of opportunities for you. I know for me, my path was a little bit different because I'm coming in it from a design route. So I went user experience design, and with that, we do low to high fidelity prototypes. And part of that high fidelity prototype is utilizing 3D printing. So we go from foam core mock-ups, and the next step in our process is taking it into 3D printing. So for us, it's just a way for us to visualize a prototype. But that's not by any that's not the mainstay of the occupation. But I think if you're like seriously interested in pursuing 3D printing, I think that there's a little bit more rigor associated with it. But I think that there are a ton of opportunities within just automotive at a purist level.
And from my end, I think just as compared to having an engineering degree plus interests or hobbies or some kind of creative artistic ability, there's a huge difference. The moment you're able to bring that slight creative little hobby, the interest in arts, it just magnifies your ability. I think that's what 3D specifically is a place where that's going to be extremely beneficial, because you will find different ways of combining things, designing things, as compared to just pure engineering. So pure engineering, yes, may take you through the door, but having those other interests or backgrounds will definitely allow you to be more successful.
I have some. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So in my opinion, I think having an engineering degree is good. It depends on what you want to do, though. There's a lot of different things you can do with additive manufacturing. I've worked with, even in my last company, I've worked with people that are more industrial designers. Usually, like, it involves a lot of multidisciplinary teams. We're hiring a lot of like technicians that have to operate the machines, and that even though you don't need a college degree, that is very like technical work. And then also in terms of I like have AM engineers that are working under me, helping prepare the build jobs, and an engineering degree isn't always a requirement if you're kind of doing some of that work too. So I think that engineering is good, especially if you're working in bigger companies or in smaller companies, and you want to move up from a leadership standpoint. But to get started, absolutely, if you don't have a college degree or don't want to get one, there are plenty of ways to participate in the automotive additive industry, especially in California. I would say we always like are looking for more people. So.
Yeah, I agree with Taylor on that, and I wanted Shawnda to hit on a couple points as well. There is a deficit in the trades, and for me personally, I didn't know that I was going to get into engineering. I was definitely more of a hands-on person. I had the opportunity to work in a shop starting at 13, and I just started working on stuff, whether that's a diesel truck or detailing a car or building a Factory 5 Cobra. I mean, it didn't matter. I had that option, which was amazing. And that's actually what sparked my interest. And then I took drafting class in high school, and I was like, okay, I guess I have to do engineering now because it's hands-on. But there is definitely a difference between being a hands-on engineer and understanding it and getting involved versus, engineers that aren't as hands-on. We have an engineer, I work with him a lot, actually. He's our dental applications engineer. He doesn't have a degree in engineering at all, but he owned his own business for 30 years in the dental. It was a dental laboratory. So he's very hands-on, very, he's a go-getter. To this day, he's a short little Armenian bald guy, runs around like crazy, but he knows his stuff. So I think an engineering degree looks good, like to Taylor's point, but at the same time, if you have that grit and that willingness to learn and you want to get involved in 3D printing, you can. So even our technician, he started off in shipping as a temporary employee. He's now our AE technician, and he runs all of the printers, and he gets to 3D print this, that, and the other, and do post-processing and marketing, for example. That's another great avenue. They set up all of our trade shows. They get to travel all the time. They get to interact with all the different companies, not just Stratasys. It might be Xerox or 3D Systems or all these other companies, and they're interacting with those. So that's another avenue that you could take. It doesn't have to be technical. It is good that it's technical, and I personally enjoy that side of things. But sales, I actually report to sales, and honestly, sales sometimes doesn't know what they're talking about, and that's perfectly fine. But that's what they do, and that's what they love. But they're still in 3D printing, and they get to be exposed to that all the time. So I don't think engineering is the only avenue. I think there are multiple avenues. And as long as you're willing to work with it and you have that drive and that grit, then more power to you. And I think you can do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for that answer. We have a bunch of questions that are popping up right now in our audience Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and actually feed a couple of those. So a little bit of a turn. One of our participants is really wondering, and a lot of people are actually, what kinds of skills separate the advanced 3D printing design or designer from the novice? Does anyone have thoughts about that? Kadie?
So in my experience, the kind of skills that would separate someone who's more of an expert at 3D printing versus someone who's more of a novice is really getting into the materials of what you're printing. There's so many different materials that you can print with. You've got plastics, and there's a whole subset of different properties that are associated with each different plastic. You can 3D print wood, you can 3D print metal, there's just different avenues. And if you can really get into knowing the material and how it's going to apply to the application of the part that you're printing, I think that's really going to put you a step further, even more so than just knowing how to make a part in CAD, and maybe even more than how to analyze a part, like do a basic structural analysis, which is also a very good step to becoming more of an expert. But I think materials really has a lot, and it's a very deep subject that can be very, very helpful.
Awesome. Taylor, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that one?
I mean, I think a lot of industries will take something that already exists and just 3D print it, which is good. I think that's like a good application. But for me, when I'm really impressed with someone's design, or like I make a design myself and I'm like impressed with myself, is when there's like a lot of rules with 3D printing that maybe not everyone is familiar with, but there are a few design rules depending on the technology you're using. So I would say like being really aware of like the application you're designing it for, and even there's so many different types of 3D printing, like Kadie was saying, like there's someone here that works in cold spray. So like there's like, I don't know. So you have to kind of look at like your application and your design. Like we have these really large printers at Divergent that you can design like a really big part that would fit in the entire thing. But it wouldn't be really efficient if you're gonna make 10,000 cars. So for us, we kind of take those larger parts and break them into smaller pieces to achieve like a better system level thinking. So I think it's like system level thinking, and then just awareness of what you're doing, kind of how we were talking about how it is good in this field to be, you may not need to be exactly hands-on working with the machine day in and day out, but you should like be very aware of the process that you're using and what the positives and negatives are, because there are like negatives to every printing process.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So a lot of DFAM, or design for additive manufacturing, doing your designs based on the technology and utilizing the strengths of the technology while minimizing the weaknesses is kind of where you're getting at too.
Yeah, I used to do a little bit of consulting in one of my other jobs, and yeah, we would go to companies and it would be like just like taking a part that was like, they would just like look at it part by part, but really like the smart way would be to look at a whole system and kind of start with 3D printing, and if that's something that you have determined that you want to use, is to kind of think of how you can apply it and combine parts or change the way you're designing things. So that kind of level of thinking really becomes more advanced 3D printing versus novice. But novice is okay. That's like how you learn. So I think, I mean,
yeah,
if a lot of people right here are still in school, I think just like even grabbing things from like Thingiverse or whatever, like you don't even have to do your own CAD, and you can like scale it and print it. You'll learn like a ton and kind of graduate from there. You kind of start at novice, and then it opens up your world as you start to learn some of these like rules and guidelines.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for answering that question. I'm going to move to another super popular question that we have from the audience. What are some of your favorite 3D printing projects that you've been working on or have worked on? Allie, you've had some really cool ones, actually, so I'm kind of going to throw that question to you first.
Well, I feel like I'm obligated to say Girl Gang Garage is #1. So I'm actually trying to get out there next month, guys. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, so I've, being as how I'm an applications engineer, that's basically kind of all the points Taylor was just talking about. I get to see a lot of different projects come in. I actually can't handle medical 3D printed projects because it's so realistic and I pass out really easy. So that's definitely not my favorite. We'll start with that. But I would have to say, kind of tying it in with my passion again is like motorsports and racing and that kind of thing. I worked on projects with Jay Leno's Garage, so that one's pretty cool. And SEMA Garage. So the SEMA show is an easy way to describe it is a huge car show, like the largest in the world, right? It's in Las Vegas every year. It promotes aftermarket products in the automotive industry. It's just awesome to go. Like, it was a dream of mine. I've got to go twice now, hoping to go this year again. But I worked on the project for Jay Leno. He's one of our main clients, and I get to support him here in Southern California. I was actually there just last week. It was for a 1968 Bronco that Ford, so Kadie's group, was actually participating in as well. And they basically took this old Bronco and put all the new stuff underneath of it, is an easy way to describe it. And I had to 3D print the grill on the front. So SEMA Garage, along with several others, Ford. I'd have to look at the list of all the different shops involved. They couldn't get the whole grill to fit on their printer at SEMA Garage, so we printed it on our 900 in our office, and I had to section it and do a lot of pre-processing work to it because they gave us a file and I was like, here you go. And it was kind of messy, so I had to section it and then glue it back together, and they ended up painting it, and it was unveiled at the 2019 SEMA show in the Ford booth, and it was super cool because you got up on it and I was standing there looking at it, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that's 3D printed, but it's been painted over. And the guy next to me was a photographer. He's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I heard that was 3D printed. And I'm like, you know, really, huh? So that was pretty cool. And then I'd have to say my second favorite one was for a Volvo, actually. It was a 1963, I want to say. I'd have to check. But basically that model of car specifically didn't have a spoiler on the back. And so they put a spoiler. I had to 3D print the entire spoiler, which was the same idea. It was a giant piece, so it goes across the entire width of the back of the car. But the really cool part, and Kadie knows this story, and I've told it to her a million times, is that it ended up being in a movie, actually. So if you guys are familiar with Fast and the Furious and that whole conglomerate of movies that they have The Rock and Jason Statham, who's my favorite actor of all time. He actually, it was in that movie at the very end where they're on Samoa Island, I believe, and it's in the background, and I was in the movie theater in the back row just flipping out when I saw that was actually a 3D printed part on my car next to my favorite actor. So I don't know, those are my top 2 favorites. So anyway.
Super fun. I love how you actually got to see the part that you printed in Fast and Furious too. I mean,
yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, I touched that part. Maybe Jason touched that part too. Oh, you know, super fangirl here.
That's awesome. Does anyone else have any really interesting or fun 3D printing projects? Or Bogi or Shawnda, I know you're pretty new to 3D printing as well, but any sort of favorite automotive projects that you've worked on as well?
I mean, how do we follow that? I mean, come on. I'm glad I'm not that. I mean, when it comes to just automotive projects in general, and I can imagine that probably the same holds true for 3D printing projects, is like the next one is the most exciting, right? Like at each step of the way, whatever project I'm currently working on or dreaming up is the most exciting, the most memorable, whatever, because we develop and we grow at each step of the way, and we take on bigger projects, we take on bigger things. So 4 years ago, I would say that our first all-female build was my most exciting and interesting build, where we did crazy put a BMW engine in a Chevy and pissed off a whole lot of people, and did some really cool stuff with bringing women together in the industry. And now it's the current project that's the most exciting, that I'm super stoked about, and particularly that integration of modern and technology and old technology, and bringing 3D printing into it and doing crazy stuff that's also going to piss some people off, but also bring a lot of attention to women in the trades. So what's the most exciting project is it's the next one. It's the one coming up.
Awesome. Shawnda, did you have anything that you would have liked to add?
It's this one right now, the 61 Volvo that we're working on, because the connection with 3D printing started because we were kind of envisioning the front end on a 61 PV544 is quite atrocious. If you're bored, Google it. It's not a cute car. Look at the front, don't look at the side profile. You look at the side, you'll be like, oh, it's not that bad. You look at the front, you're like, what is that? So it kind of looks like a sandcastle. And when we were envisioning what we wanted to do with it, the grill is what can make or break that car. And I was like, oh, we got to 3D print that. Bogi was like, no, we could probably weld something. And I was like, no, we have to 3D print it, which sent us down this path that has led us to all you awesome people in terms of incorporating 3D printing into our build. So for me, I'm super pumped about it. I'm super pumped that Ally just did a grill for something else, because we're going to take all that knowledge and we're going to pull it into the Volvo, and we're going to do an even cooler grill and make the front end of this car look halfway presentable. So I am really excited about this project.
Thank you so much, Shawnda. So I'm going to go and throw a couple more questions in from the audience. Members are wondering, what skill sets should students learn today to prepare for the future, and specifically what kind of software systems or hardware systems should they be familiar with as well?
Yeah, I can't speak to software systems or the hard skills that are necessary for additive manufacturing, because that's not my arena. But I can say that I think universally what students today, the skills that they need are soft skills. They need to be learning to stay creative, to stay curious, to stay wanting to learn always, because our society, our technology, we know this, like technology is moving at a ridiculously rapid rate. And whatever it is you're learning now, it's going to be something completely different tomorrow, next week, the year after, right? Like it's constantly changing. And if you're not a student for life, you're not going to make it. And so I think that's just kind of the universal thing, is no matter what software you're learning, no matter what program you're learning, more than anything, learn to learn how to be a student and to stay curious.
Awesome. I think that's a great point, Bogi, about, continuous learning, always staying as a student. I feel that a lot of us can relate to that, especially, in this ever-changing field of additive manufacturing. You always have to learn something new. Taylor, I noticed that you had your microphone on real quick before Bogi jumped on. Did you have something that you wanted to say?
Sure. Wait. So classes or skills?
Skills,
I would
hardware,
say,
software, yeah.
So I think depending on what you want to do, right? So if you want to be like, if you're more like engineering area, I definitely think like coding and learning that side. For when I was in school, I had a few classes, but really that's like a big part of like it helps you be like more efficient at any job you do. So I would say like that's something important, to just have like a working knowledge of like using Python and stuff like that. I think that that's something that I took during quarantine, and I tried to get a lot better at that, and it's been really helpful in my day-to-day job, like working with models. Part of me continuously being a student, I guess. And then CAD, I think as you're doing 3D printing, all your models, you have to be good at doing CAD. Your models is only as good as the CAD that comes out. If you're more like learning a lot of analysis, not really just the software, but like really understanding like design and analysis, I think, is really important, especially because now everything is so automated. I really like some of my training initially, like I did this like program where it was very, instead of like computer analysis, it was all like you would do your computer analysis and you had to do a hand calc to show that you understood it. So I think like not always just relying on your computers too, and having kind of the very basic knowledge kind of helps you also come up with cool designs. If you think of it kind of less like I'm gonna run it through this model versus I'm gonna just like think about the fundamental problem.
Awesome. Yeah, I like how you touched on CAD as well, because I definitely have found as someone that's not a CAD jockey in the additive space, it does come into some, I do come into some trying problems sometimes when I'm trying to get my vision of a 3D printed part out there. So I like that little spec about, you know, understanding CAD and understanding the fundamental problem. Malini, I heard that I saw that you wanted to speak as well. Did you have something you would also like to add?
Where additive is concerned, really you're looking at so many aspects, right? You have knowledge of material, you have knowledge of design, or you may have a lot of knowledge of equipment, just how to run it, fix it, change it, make it do what you want it to do. An understanding of mechanical engineering, for instance, in terms of what kind of forces are going to be on this part. How am I going to create a design that's going to be able to meet it? You can have manufacturing background where you will know exactly what's needed for an operator to be able to do their job right. So really there's so many different aspects to additive based on the applications. So any or all of those skills that you may bring in will be helpful. And so education, which takes you to all of these traditional backgrounds, can also all bring you right back into additive. Quite successful and happy and excited every single day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that had something they'd like to add to that question before we go on to another audience question?
Just a quick thing regarding software. I know they're looking for software systems and kind of getting an idea of what would be good to learn. One of the platforms that we use is GrabCAD Print, and it's free to sign up as long as you're running a PC, not a Mac. It's not available on Mac right now. But that gives you an idea. You can look at template 3D printers from Stratasys and actually set up different prints and look at how everything's sliced with the part if you drag and drop a native CAD file or an STL file. So that's kind of cool because it's the slicing software. But depending on what you're doing, say you're a designer background or looking at that, Blender is a free software that you can use, and you can actually utilize that a lot, and that can be used on our 3D printers. At Stratasys, I know there's a whole realm of other technologies and printers out there, but that's another good one. But there's just a lot of free softwares out there that even if you don't have access or the opportunity to get a license for anything, depending on what you're doing, there's plenty of free options out there. So if you just search it in the Google bar, you can definitely find stuff that'll help you out. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I'm all about that open source software. So always look out for that, like Onshape, free for students, and Blender is one of my favorites as well. I love Blender. ZBrush, I think you can get a 45-day free trial. So there are a lot of options. We have a lot of questions in here, so I'm going to do my best to get through them in the last couple of minutes, 10 to 15 minutes we have. So I think one of the questions that is interesting from a college student's perspective or high school student's perspective is what organizations, clubs, or activities do you believe students should join now to improve on CADing or to jump into the manufacturing industry? Anyone have any thoughts on that one? Kadie?
I know that when I was in college, I was a part of the FSAE team, which was a really great resource, not necessarily specifically for 3D printing, but what it did do was open up a lot of opportunities to design parts. And when you're designing parts, you always have the opportunity to 3D print them. So that was something that was really helpful for me to get into actually designing real world situation parts that were going to be used, where prototypes would actually be necessary.
College orgs are the best. Allie, Taylor, Malini, other one? Excuse me, any other ones that you like?
I was terrible and I didn't do any of those things in high school. It really, yeah, they really, like a lot of companies really want to know that you did clubs. I would recommend to do it. Plus it seems like a really good experience. Like a lot of my friends through work, for example, my roommate who's an engineer at Boeing did the formula team, and it's a great experience and kind of a safe space to really like be a little more creative than with your school projects. I would say anything, and it wouldn't have to, it doesn't exactly have to be like engineering focused, or it could be like a lot of different projects. So just something that you're passionate about, and just something where you do have like a role where you're responsible for something. I think that's like a great experience to have.
And I would agree with that. I wouldn't gear everything, all your activities, just to be able to enter a manufacturing field and change your interests. I would follow your interests, your passions, and it'll lead you in the right direction. And if it's manufacturing, great. If not, it'll lead you in a direction where you then forcing yourself into, tailoring activities to just enter one particular field. And really, any of these activities, any of these hobbies and passions would be just as beneficial to automotive manufacturing as to any other field. So, passion.
Yeah. Like I guess one thing I always talked about, I guess when I was interviewing for jobs, is I was in a sorority and I designed like a haunted house. And so even though it wasn't like engineering or anything, I basically built like a whole haunted house with my friends, and it looked like really awesome. And we like machined things for it and stuff like that. So that was my, so it doesn't exactly have to be like an official club or anything, even though they're really good.
I want to echo on Taylor's sentiment. Like the faux project will serve you well when you go to interview with companies. I know I had like a portfolio full of them. Experience is hard to get, but don't let that impede you. What you can create on your own, and if you can talk to that like it is its own professional experience, will translate to hiring managers, and they will see that at the end of the day, people want to see that you can do what you're putting on your resume, or that you have the aptitude to learn in a way that's conducive with the job role. So like if you got free time in your hand and you've got a good idea, like bake it out and make it into something and be proud of it and show it, because it will help just as good as an internship.
Yeah, to kind of add on to that too. So I wasn't involved in that many clubs. I was on the Formula SAE team, but not nearly as involved as a lot of the other members, especially Kadie. She was very heavily involved. We were on the same team. We went to the same college. But because of that, I couldn't join because I was working 5 jobs, especially my senior year, to pay for college. And I think once I listed all of that, to Shawnda's point, experience, it's hard to get. But if you, even the fact that you're showing, hey, I'm paying my way through college, and you're honest and upfront with them, you're like, hey, I can't join and participate in as much stuff as I'd like, but hey, look at my work ethic, and I'm, paying my way through college. That says a lot too. The fact that you're, dedicated and devoted, and you want something hard enough that you're spending a lot of extra hours and making sacrifices. That's also a very important note, and the right people will notice that.
And I do want to second Allie on that. She literally was working 5 jobs at one time. It was insane. So that's really big kudos to her. And I do think that it really helped her with her job searching when they could see that work ethic that she had.
I don't know how you worked 5 jobs and a mechanical engineering degree. That's insane. I had one and I was drowning with EE.
Part-time.
So,
Part-time.
Okay, part-time. Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah.
But still, good on you that you were able to do that. And I'd really like to echo Shawnda's point really quickly. And, Malini's as well. Following passions and kind of following those down the rabbit hole to create portfolio projects really do help you when you are out of school. I 3D printed a full-on working cello. I play the cello. I enjoy it. I've been doing it since 4th grade. I combine those passions and it's become a really powerful tool as I've been interviewing for companies recently. And, you know, that's always great topic. So even things that, you know, typically aren't your standard SAE, which are still great topics to have or great activities, you can still do some really interesting stuff if you just want to go off on your own and kind of go crazy and insane. So we have time for roughly one more question before we sign off for the evening and go back to the networking. And I think I'm going to take one of our top questions of the night so far. I'm trying to decide. Let's see here. Since this is an all-female automotive panel, I'd like to ask, what's been your biggest challenge in your work as a woman in automotive, and how do you overcome it? So, Bogi, I feel like you're in a really unique position to answer this question. What do you think?
You know, it's so interesting because hearing everybody's stories, I'm listening and thinking, God, there's so much difference in the experience of a woman coming into the automotive industry, in depending on the various areas of the industry that they're coming into. My experience as a technician out on the shop turning wrenches is probably highly different than a lot of your experiences as women in the automotive industry through additive printing, additive manufacturing, and kind of more on the engineering side. So I can only speak to what I've experienced, and it's not always pretty. I came up in a point of the automotive industry from a mechanical side when women were not present. There weren't a lot of ladies out there, and we were not welcome. And I experienced a lot of pushback and a lot of people very clearly telling me that I didn't belong there and they didn't want me there. So my experience as a woman was not necessarily a pleasant one. Overcoming that is knowing that no matter where you are, and no matter how many people don't want you there, there are people who are allies and there are people who do want you there, or don't care whether you're male or female and just care about you being able to do the job. So there are allies out there, find them. And no matter what career or path you're taking, you're gonna have people who don't support you and don't want you to do what you do. But find your allies and let the people who don't support you, let them fuel your fire, and find the resources, find the people out there who are your cheerleaders.
That is very powerful. Thank you so much, Bogi, for sharing that. You know, Malini, you had almost an opposite point or an opposite experience from what you were saying earlier about GM and how they truly do value that quality and, you know, bringing more women into STEM fields. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences?
Sure. So again, I've always been in this manufacturing space all my career, where it was completely male dominated. Even the classes I attended, I was the only girl. And a lot of times in the plant or on night shifts, I'm the only girl. And so for the most part, I would agree with Bogi. There are some challenging situations. What I have seen, again, we'll get to GM. This is all pre-GM. Again, what I have seen in myself, in other girl engineers or manufacturing engineers, is that we tend to compensate for that or to try and prove our existence in that space by working a lot, like really trying to show what we're capable of, just to prove the naysayers wrong, right? To show that we belong. And that's something that I am guilty of at times too. And I think we, especially in the safe space that we're in right now, where we're talking, need to just let folks know it's okay if you don't do that. You don't. Your being there, your experience, your knowledge, your passion for the job are enough. You know, do your job, but you don't have to do 200% of it, because you'll burn out, you'll get resentful, you won't give your all when things get like that. So I did find situations like that in my career. At GM, I've had a completely different experience. And again, I think It's because from top to down, from upper management all the way down, it's well ingrained in every department and every group as to the equality factor. So in fact, if there is any semblance of anyone having any issue or feeling left out, and they will do everything they can to help you and resolve it. And we're not talking lots of HR runs or saying, hey, this happened to me. It's just ingrained in the culture at this point. You can sense it in meetings. You can sense it when you are having discussions. There's an equal playing field. And that was my first experience with full-blown equality, especially in something which is so male-dominated as an automotive industry. So GM's been a great experience, but prior to that, all of my manufacturing stuff, yes, there were challenging aspects, just like Bogi's mentioned. And you smile, you laugh, you keep going with it, you roll with the punches, but mostly you tend to overwork and you get caught in that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was really interesting. Have something to add?
Oh, no, just that I'm 100% guilty, right? Like, I think we can all probably acknowledge that. Very good point.
Definitely. Taylor, so I hate to single you out on this one, but I actually worked at Divergent 3D about 4 years ago, and I was one of 5 women of a company of 60, and 2 of those women were also interns, so take it as you will. How has it been working in a male-dominated industry, and have you seen Divergent 3D change as well, hiring more women and becoming more integrated into it?
So yeah, I think like after COVID happened, we scaled back, and actually I, for a period of time, I think, was the only woman in engineering. But now, I mean, so as part of that, I kind of stepped in as our production manager, and now I get to hire people. So I mean, I think it speaks to, like, if you have more people in like leadership positions that are making those decisions, like, it's kind of like you're more open. I don't know, you tend to like people that are like you, I think, when you're interviewing people, especially at these smaller companies where there's not it's not as like regimented as like a large company. When you're hiring at startups, a lot of it is like cultural fit and things like that. So I think I am in a position where we are hiring people, and that is something that I'm thinking about, not like exclusively, but I do, and we have added more women in our group. But yeah, I would say it is still mostly like men that work at Divergent, but it's also, I don't know, it's one of those things that I worked at another company where they tried to force it to be a quota of like women to work there, and I don't know if that's really right either. It needs to be people that want to work there and are qualified. And what I'm finding when I'm hiring for jobs is that we do have a lot of really well qualified women candidates, and so that's kind of the direction that I'm going with our group here at Divergent. But in the past, before I went there, I worked, actually, my group was mostly, it was about half and half, I would say, at GE, but I've definitely worked, I started as like an intern at Toyota, I think, when I was like 18 years old, and I was like the only woman, and they had us like working on the line, and that was interesting. And I don't know, people like made more comments, I feel like back then. They'd be like, oh, like that's how you got into the engineering school and stuff like that. But as you like move forward in your career, it's like if you hear people saying stuff like that, you can kind of like shut them down. But when you're first starting out, it's like hard, and you'll probably still have some degree of that starting out, I think, if you're like in a field where you're like one of the minorities. Did I answer your question, Maddie?
Yeah, you did. And for the record, like, I had a great time at Divergent. I loved working with you guys.
Yeah, but it's like,
it was super fun. Even if it was male dominated, which I'm not saying was a bad thing. The people there were absolutely wonderful, and they were so nurturing and like caring for the interns, which was awesome.
It's so hard because like for me, like, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm really adaptable. So like, I can be happy in a lot of places, and unless it's like a really negative environment. So like for me, even though it is male dominated, that since the environment is positive, like I want to make it more diverse, but like it's still pretty great as it is.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Taylor, for giving us that perspective about your company and where you work from as well. It looks like we're just coming up to an hour within our conversation. So unfortunately, I know there's a lot of questions left in the Q&A. We're not going to be able to get to all of them. But what's really exciting is that after we go out of presentation mode, everyone's going to be sent back to the floor where the tables are. And we'll be all hanging around right after that. Allie, Bogi, Kadie, Malini, Shawnda, and Taylor will all be hanging out at the tables, so feel free to come on down and chat with us and ask us your questions directly. So I want to give a huge shout out to all of our panel participants to say thank you for joining us tonight. And for all of our audience members as well, thank you again for coming to this wonderful presentation. I've had a blast, it's been wonderful. And I believe we're gonna, right before we exit presentation mode, we'll be welcoming one of our Women in 3D Printing friends, Rhonda from Shapeways, to the stage, so she can give a brief presentation and a brief talk about Shapeways and what they're doing with women in 3D printing. So I'd like to say thank you all again. Panel participants, you can go ahead and turn off your cameras and mics so we can allow Rhonda to the stage. Should be a really brief presentation, so everyone stick around. We'll be in networking sessions soon enough. Thank you all again for joining us. And Rhonda, welcome to Women in 3D Printing stage, and I hand it off to you.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, everyone. This was amazing, and I really appreciate this brief moment to chat with you. I promise I will not keep you that long from networking. I am Rhonda Gee, as Maddie said. I head up marketing at Shapeways, and we are proud to support Women in 3D Printing Next Gen. If you don't know Shapeways, we scale on-demand 3D printing for the automotive industry, as well as over 40 other SIC industries, and have shipped more than 20 million quality 3D printed parts to over 1 million customers in 160 countries. And we would love to chat with you, and I'm sure all the other sponsors would as well, at the networking event and tables. And one of my colleagues will be at our table if you have any questions. So please stop by and say hi, not only to us, but to everyone who is supporting this wonderful event. So thank you very much again, Maddie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for a little word from our sponsors, and Janet or Sanjana, who are the wonderful technical wizards behind this awesome event. Thank you guys as well for really putting your best effort into this. It turned off without a hitch. And you're available. Oh, there you are, Janet.
Hello, thank you. And I know Sanjana has a little bit of some updates to share. So bring her up.
Hi, and thank you everyone again for joining us for today's event. It was really great hearing from all the panelists. We heard some really inspiring stories and statements. I did want to make a quick thank you to all our sponsors. This event wouldn't have been possible without all of you, so thank you very much for your support. And we do have a couple of announcements, so please mark your calendars for the upcoming Meet the Stars of 3D Printing events. Our next event will be on Saturday, May 22nd from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, and this will be our Beauty Edition event. And on June 22nd, we have our Healthcare and Medical Devices Edition event. The Women in 3D Printing Next Gen mentorship program is also taking applications, so you can use the QR code or the website below to sign up. And of course, we have our job board available as well on the Women in 3D Printing website. So thank you everyone again, and now we'll be moving into our networking session.